All right. This is a one-man sixth round post-fight show. Hopefully, my video is showing up here. It's appear to be encountering some bandwidth problems. So, if I am not showing up on video, then it's the worst and least interesting post-fight show that you could possibly imagine. I'm here to talk about the end of the CroCop Gonzaga 2 fight and a card that I don't know, I can't say it was a great card. A lot of the fights that people hoped would impress and be fun ended up being pretty disappointing. Um, some of the one I think the headliner ended up being a better fight than many had hoped, myself included. At the very least, a better finish. I don't know that the fight itself was okay. It wasn't, it was one of those things where nobody was really pulling out a bunch of high level MMA through most of it. We saw a battling leg lock going back and forth, a missed head kick, and then finally CroCop was able to capitalize on position and land some elbows, and then you know put a pretty good beating on Gonzaga as he tried to get up and finish the fight. I mean, Gonzaga's never been a fighter that's impossible to finish. He's never been a fighter known for his gas tank. He's a tough grappler, a better than advertised boxer, but not, you know, it was a toss up fight. I thought Gonzaga would win it. He looked to be winning it early, but he faded. Surprisingly, CroCop didn't, and he was able to gut out a tough, decent win. The UFC always needs exciting heavyweights or heavyweights with some name value, so I think it was really good for them to see CroCop get the win because every just looking at fans on Twitter and fan reactions, a lot of people were a lot more excited for that win than I would have even guessed. I think I'm kind of gotten to the point where I'm no longer like I just didn't get up for a CroCop fight. That doesn't get me going, doesn't get my blood pumping. It was still fun. It was still good to see him win, but I don't even have that nostalgia of like, oh man, I had to watch him get the win here. Um, Unfortunately, the co-main event was a really lackluster light heavyweight back and forth. Manoa said afterward that he was injured, and I don't know. That's not a great excuse. He won, but certainly could explain why he was so tepid and just not doing anything other than trying to get a win and get out. I mean, even his corner was saying, this is a points game and keep, basically just telling him to keep controlling the fight and not get reckless, which made it a pretty ugly fight. Blachowicz didn't really seem to ignite, he didn't really seem to get any passion or get going in the fight until late, and it was too little too late. So that kind of unfortunately, we had some highlight performances here and there, but there were a lot of, I think, fights that people hoped would be more action packed that ended up being just kind of meh decisions. Going from the bottom up, Taylor Lapilus looked really nicely technical and dominant against an opponent that, frankly, most MMA fighters should dominate against. Rocky Lee. I mean, it's a tough China washout. Being tough China washout is not, that's not a good hallmark for your career. So Lapilus got a win he should have. It would have been nice to see him finish, get a finish, considering how dominant his striking was. But it's for a fighter as young as he is, just getting rounds, getting on a big stage, getting a win under his belt is a good thing. Hopefully, he'll be continue to improve as he goes along. Stephen Ray got a great win over Marcin Bandel. Just absolutely dominated. Looked fantastic. He's a real physical force out there for the lightweight division. Big lightweight, powerful puncher. Good everywhere. Not a great combination kickboxer. I don't know that he'll ever climb way up the ranks into title contention, but the kind of powerful, maybe Jeremy Stevens um, fighter who can really put people off just with the amount of power he can put behind his punches and be competitive because of that. After that, we saw Alexandra Albu and Isabella Badurek. Badurek did not look ready for the UFC and for this level of competition at all. She looked really bad at weigh-ins. I mean, this was, I think, her first big weight cut, and it looked. I mean, it was the first big weight cut of Albu's career too. But being a bodybuilder, as they suggested, she probably has a lot better idea of just how to get down in weight, even if it's not technically like there's bodybuilding weight cutting and sports weight cutting, and they're not necessarily the same thing. But Albu still looked like she had a much better command of that process and looked way less drained in the ring or in the cage. But Durk just, her striking didn't look like she was ready to compete with anyone. Every time she got hit, she'd turn her head to the side, look down, didn't have any idea how to defend punches, got hit hard coming in every time. And it was only a matter of time before Albu put her away. So, really solid win for Albu. She looks like a legit talent. I mean, both these women had big question marks over their head coming in. Albu looks like a much more legit pickup for the UFC and somebody who can win going forward. Um, Anthony Hamilton beat Daniel Omalanchik. That kind of seals, at least for me, the idea of Omalanchik as a developing heavyweight for the UFC, somebody who has the technical skill and could maybe develop athletically, get in better shape, start being competitive in the division. I was hoping to see that out of Omalanchik at some point, but I don't see it. I mean, Hamilton, it wasn't a great win for Hamilton. It doesn't make me a lot higher on him. He was way bigger, way more physically powerful, just able to kind of grind Omalanchik out and keep him down and keep wearing on him. But that doesn't, it's not like, oh, and now I want to see Anthony Hamilton as a top 15 heavyweight. It's now he got to win, he stays around. Omalanchik probably shouldn't at this point. Um, Moving up the card, Yautin Meza versus Damian Stasiak. That, I don't know. I think it's somewhat fair to say that I've probably been more down on Meza than I should be. He's a UFC fighter. He's a decent enough vet. He's solid everywhere. He's not great anywhere. But this was, I don't know. This kind of spoke badly to me of Stasiak too. My feeling on him was that he'd be the more technical fighter out there, but that he's maybe not physically strong enough to be a really competitive UFC talent. And eventually, Meza just kind of, I mean, 29-28 doesn't say that tell that story, but I've thought that Meza really dominated the positional grappling game for most of the bout. And considering that Stasiak's real, despite his karate background, his real strength has really been his grappling on the regional circuit. That doesn't give me a lot of hope for how well Stasiak can do going forward. He should drop to bantamweight. He looks undersized at featherweight, and that might help. I mean, it might leave him ending up on the bottom less, but until I see a lot more consistent technical striking out of him and technical wrestling, it's hard to have a lot of faith there. I really liked what I saw of Michael Lebout in a loss to Sergio Moraes. I expected Moraes to win that. I even thought he might win the decision just because Lebout is a really pretty good defensive grappler. And Moraes is coming back off a long, long injury layoff. So I thought there was a chance that Moraes may have a little trouble getting into this fight, and Lebout could make it a close fight, an interesting fight. So it's, I think that some people may have been down on Moraes there, that he didn't press his grappling advantages earlier, and that it took him a while to get the fight where he wanted it. But that's, he's still got to win. And for a fighter like him, who's not a great striker and who's not a great wrestler, but is a very, very, very good grappler, I mean, for him to get a win when his wrestling isn't really going, that's still good for him. I mean, that's quality for him. He's not just going to go in and immediately sub every fighter that walks through the door. And for Lebout, I'm happy to see him fight again. He's tough. He's well-rounded. He can be an exciting, pressuring action fighter for the UFC. He's maybe not the best athlete in the world, but he's good everywhere and a well-rounded, tough guy. So he put on a good performance, even losing. Bartosz Fabinski, definitely. I mean, he was the first, I believe he was the first Polish fighter on the card to get a win. And he looked way better than Gareth McClellan, playing a lot of the same game. They're both kind of power strikers who then depend on getting top control Fabinski's much more of a top control ground and pound guy, which is what we saw. And McClellan's much more of a wild kind of throw big strikes, look for big throws and trips, and then look for action subs. And none of that really presents itself as a good meta game for MMA, so to speak. And Fabinski took advantage. He was able to just take McClellan down over and over and over, press his case. He's got a very Fabinski's got a very UFC ready game. I don't know how high his ceiling is, but he fights the way that tends to get you wins in the UFC. You know, takedowns, top control, rinse and repeat. Um, Leon Edwards put on a fantastic show against Seth Bashinsky. It was really the fight I was looking for out of Leon Edwards. He's a really powerful, really athletic, really dynamic striker. It doesn't tell me that Edwards has necessarily solved his volume problems. I mean, that's the problem for him, is really throwing enough strikes to take a decision against really tough fighters. But Seth Bashinsky wasn't that tough. I mean, when you can hit as hard as Edwards does and as accurately as Edwards does, you're going to win a lot of fights just on landing big shots and knocking people out. Getting an 8-second KO was great. He looked great, and I hope to see him do more at welterweight because he's a great athletic talent with great potential and the takedown defense to really shore up his striking. So I liked that a lot. That was a great show. Marina Moros was the exceptional sort of standout performance of the whole card, I'd have to say, just because she was a fighter I think a lot of people really had no expectations for. I had no expectations for her. Um, Apparently she has a background as a boxing coach with the Olympic team and some other things like that. I mean, I knew she was a pretty good athlete and she'd studied athletics at one of the local universities, and she, showed that she could completely outclass Calderwood in what has to be the worst showing of Joanne Calderwood's career. I think Asling Daly was saying on Twitter that there may be something going on with Calderwood personally. She did not look like the same fighter she normally does out there, so I wouldn't be surprised if that were the truth. But Moroz just came out, showed no fear of Calderwood at all, blitzed her, and then jumped on a pseudo flying armbar, which is her bread and butter. It's not a technique I like to see out of fighters as a go-to technique because I think it puts you in a really bad position a lot, but it worked brilliantly here, so you can't fault her. She then called out Joanna Jędrzejczyk, which I don't know that that's the fight she should be getting right away. I'd love to see. Some people are suggesting Moros versus Gadelha, and I think that would be good. But that's a division short on challengers too. So if Jędrzejczyk wants to stay busy, then anyone on a win can be a title challenger. After that, Pavel Pavlak put on a strong performance against Sheldon Westcott. Westcott looked good early, really had his fight. I mean, clinching and scrambling and grinding is really kind of Westcott's game. He's a guy who looks for a lot of submissions in transition. And he was getting the game he wanted, and he gassed still. And it's never a good fighter it's never a good sign when, as a fighter, you're getting the fight you want, and it still ends up costing you. That's not good. Pavlak took advantage as Westcott faded. And because it's too, a lot of the thing is Pavlak's game, what he wants is that inside, boxing inside and grappling. He showed a lot more good kicking game on the outside. And so as Westcott faded, Pavlak really had a lot of comfort getting his game because that was where Westcott was trying to press him. So it's a good win for Pavlak. A bad loss for Westcott suggests that there's maybe some underlying training issues with him that are going on that could kind of stunt his development, because that was a fight that it looked like he was on his way to winning before he faded. And like I say, then that takes us back to the main event with Jimmy Manuwa and Jan Blachowicz, and Manuwa got a win it was kind of a coasting win, which is great for Manuwa. He continues to stay strong in the division, even on what looked like an off fight night for him, but it's too bad for Blachowicz. He's been around a while. got a long career under him, and he really, I don't know that he's not like running out of time in the UFC or anything like that, but he kind of needs to make a run to get into title contention if that's something that he's going to do. And this put a pretty quick stop to that now. If he can bounce back and get another 2 or 3 wins, he could climb into the top 10, but this was definitely a setback. So, those are all my thoughts from an okay fight night or fight pass card. It was, it's morning MMA, which I like because then you get the rest of the day off to do other stuff. But it's not, it wasn't a really like overwhelming. Oh my god, that was the best card ever. A lot of cage time, a lot of development from fighters, a lot of guys getting work and just trying to introduce themselves to the UFC. So if that's your thing, maybe worth watching. If that's not your thing, then you maybe didn't miss all that much. Anyway, if you like this video, give it a like. That's a thumbs up. If you can't see this because I don't know if my video is working or not, then this saying making the thumbs up sign is totally useless. But give it a thumbs up. You can follow me at TheZaneSimon on Twitter. You can follow all our video content over at MMANation.com on YouTube. You should totally subscribe there. And of course, find me on Bloody Elbow. And thanks, everyone. We'll have, we'll have Knuckle Up. We'll have vivisections and prospectus and care don't care and all our normal stuff next week as well. So stay tuned for all of that. And thanks for tuning in.